Hey guys, the exact same day, April 24th, Friday, it's 8:55 p.m. Might as well be 9. We're having a pretty good day so far. We only have a couple hours left of the day. And yeah, I just wanted to, I didn't do much today after the last journal. But I had a really interesting thought that I like really sat down and I wrote down, and it was like low-key very interesting. If you're wondering, after the journal, I did overeat today. Not as bad as yesterday. Still overate quite a bit, but it's fine. But after the journal, basically, I went in a dopamine hibernation. Fancy fucking word for basically nothing. It just means I sat in my bed for 5 hours and I just was on my phone for way too long. No, like 5 hours. So that happened, but then I got back to business at around 6:40, and what I've been doing is, well, I had dinner. Way too much food. I ate way too much food. But I had dinner, and what I was also doing is I'm starting to plan out the next 5 months of my life. And it's really cool. And I wanted to share this quick thought about planning and why planning could be hard sometimes, and how to not overcomplicate it, but just why I basically temporarily figured out, what I basically did is, from my experience, I defined what the hardest part of planning is when it comes to making a great plan for like the next X amount of time. Let's say you got a deadline in like 5 months and you're trying to plan how the fuck you're going to accomplish that big of a goal, right? Okay, let's get into it, but it's good. I'm having a good time. But we still haven't worked on PayPal yet today. We're just planning. I'm hoping to get a little bit more planning done. I'm definitely not going to finish it today because it's a lot of stuff to do and a lot of stuff to define and figure out. And I'm not going to find out some of these things required for planning in about, a week or so, until I like do my taxes, for example. You get the point. I want to do a little bit more planning and then work on PayPal. So yeah, we're good on time. I just checked my storage. I should have another, 15, 20 minutes on this phone. Okay. To give you a picture, because I don't have my computer in front of me and I don't want to go back inside for no reason. I do want to just walk out here stubbornly. What I did, okay, I did go through a lot of trial and error in terms of how I was planning, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about what I did right now and tell you how I'm planning. So what I did is I have my yearly goals, but I set those aside and I set a completely blank canvas, like completely blank. So no priorities, no nothing. And for this canvas was for this specific time frame. If you're curious, the time frame is 4.5 months, because the deadline I checked the audition date for last year auditions, and it was like basically mid-September, and so I put the deadline as mid-September. So 4.5 months, right? For the audition. There's no other deadline, but it's a good place to have a goal set, Ideally, you don't want time frames and goals, but sometimes they help. So there's a caveat there, but we're not going to dive into that. Okay. But yeah, fresh slate, 4.5 month time frame. I listed out eight different transformations I want to make. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I'll list them off as I remember them. So it was to make RCC, be financially comfortable, have a great physique. By the way, these sound very vague, but I defined them a little bit more in the sheet. I'm listing off what matters off the top of my head. So sorry, my dad's looking at me. Make RCC, be financially comfortable, have a great physique, keep my parents at bay. It's a big one. What else was there? Oh yeah, reduce masturbation by like a lot. To like 2 times a week, to like twice a week instead of twice daily. I want to start talking to girls. And that's all I can remember at the moment. I'll probably remember something else, but bro, my parents are so fucking weird. They're just looking at me. Okay, but stuff like that, it doesn't matter because you're not gonna remember, and I'm not gonna remember. But basically, I have 8 goals, right? I had 8 goals in bold that were not a lot of words on them, and under those goals, I put like 2 or 3 bullet points, trying to more specifically define what that goal actually meant, if that makes sense. Okay, that's step 1. Just very simple, defining what goals I wanted to make in those 4.5 months. We're not getting to the good stuff yet, but I'm really excited for it. And then after that, I didn't do this yet, but I'm just gonna define all the inputs for that goal. So basically, after that, I'm gonna have like this monster to-do list, right? In terms of like goals I want to hit. And then I'm gonna have this monster list of specific goals I want to hit, right? And then the next part is I'm gonna have a monster list of things to do to hit that goal. Now that's the easy part. And basically, you can just simplify that to setting my goal and just declaring what I gotta do to hit that goal. Anyone could do that. Now, there was an interesting thought that I had, because then I started trying to make a timeline in terms of what to focus on at what time, and I got a little bit stuck. And then I paused for a second, and I was like, wait, why the fuck is that part so hard? Like, I'm very smart, I'm very analytical, almost too much for my own good. And I still, it's really hard. And so I wrote this down because I was like, I started talking to myself like a crazy person, and I started just explaining why it was hard, and I was like blowing my own mind. And then I was like, wait, I need to write this down. And then I wrote it down, and then now I'm so hyped about it that I'm saying it on a journal. So this is basically what I wrote. It's pretty simple. What I said, and by the way, this description or whatever I'm about to say, if I had to make a title for it, it would be, in my opinion, it would be the hardest part of making a plan, at least for basic goals. When you have a limited amount of time to do something, and it's a lot of things going on, this is the hardest part about planning, in my opinion, at least so far. And I'm pretty sure that opinion won't change unless I do a lot of planning to the point where I get a lot better at planning. But you get the point. I'm fucking overthinking right now. So this is what that is, all right? This is basically what I think the hardest part of planning is so far, when it comes to making basically a foolproof plan. But there will never be a foolproof plan. But if you're trying to make the best plan possible, this is what I think the hardest part of it is. Okay, so you ready? Okay, so what I wrote down was that figuring out the goal and figuring out how to achieve the goal is not the hard part. The hard part is figuring out what to focus on at what time. I already said that. Now, the reason for that is because there are 2 rules that exist with making a plan, all right? Rule number one is that you cannot do everything at the same time. Now, I defined this. So if you have a bunch of things you want to accomplish over the course of like a year or something, which a lot of people do. A lot of people have like 5 goals for the year or like 10 goals. A fundamental thing is focus. Okay, a fundamental thing is focus. Because no matter what you are, you have a limited amount of time. And if you set goals, you probably have them under a limited amount of time. And so because you don't have an unlimited amount of time, which, by the way, this unlimited amount of time thing, it's like a part of like why these rules exist, but I'm just explaining it first. Because you don't have infinite time, you need to focus. Because I'm not going to explain why, but focus is so important. Basically, it's like, it doesn't make sense mathematically, but it's just true. Is that you can get more done with the same amount of energy and same amount of hours if you work on less things compared to if you were to work on everything. It's almost like the opposite rule of like the sum parts are greater than the whole. Like 4 times, like when it comes to working on one thing versus like 3 things, the best way to explain it is that 8 times 1 is 8, right? 8 times 1 is, actually, never mind. Fuck it. I'm gonna use Sam Alvin's example. Sam Alvin's described focus as a multiplier. So if you have 8 hours a day and your focus is level 1, then you have 8. But if you work 8 hours a day and your focus level is level 4, then you have 32 outputs, right? So it's literally a multiplier. And so the less focus you have, the less productive you are. And the definition of focus is, well, actually, I don't know, but like it's just working on less things, or putting a unit to do less things. Doesn't make very much. It's kind of hard to describe what focus is fundamentally, but you understand. What I'm trying to say is focus is important. I'm trying to explain everything as if it's like an elementary school lecture, because I'm just overthinking, but I just want to make this as clear as possible. So rule number 1 is you can't work on everything at the same time, because focus is very important. And if you do try to work on everything at the same time, you're probably going to get nothing accomplished. Very simple. Focus is fucking important. That's that. Okay, but here's where shit gets kind of crazy. Is rule number 2. Rule number 2 is that there are certain prerequisites. Let me say that again. There are, most of the time, if you have a big goal, there are prerequisites to certain goals or inputs. Okay? Let me explain this. So you have like goals number 1 through 8, and you have your inputs associated with those goals. Now, certain things cannot be done without something being done first. I'm gonna use Minecraft as an example because it's so fucking simple. When you spawn in Minecraft, like, okay, look, I'm gonna use Minecraft, and this is gonna make everything make sense. Okay? In Minecraft, you can only do one thing at a time. Yeah, in Minecraft, if you do one thing at a time, you get more done quickly, right? That represents focus. But also in Minecraft, when you spawn in, now this represents goals, by the way. I'm gonna represent goals in Minecraft. When you spawn in Minecraft, you have, let's say you want to beat the game, right? You have all these goals of like getting good gear, getting Eyes of Ender, beating the dragon, getting diamonds. These are all goals, right? But the way Minecraft works is that you can't just spawn in and get diamonds. You have to spawn in and punch wood and then make tools, and then like it stacks on top of each other, you know? And so that's what I mean, is that when you have this list of goals, I'll give you an example. So the last goal I had was talk to girls, because I was not gonna allow myself to do that until I hit 190 pounds. Just for sakes of clarity. It doesn't have to be a number, but it's easier if it's a number, because if you don't put a number for it, you're just gonna keep sabotaging. But that's another discussion. Another example is that under my first goal, which is making RCC. By the way, when I say goals number 1 through 8, I don't mean they're not chronological. They're just not. Just off the top of my head. But goal number 1 was making RCC. And one of the inputs for that goal was taking lessons from like the best of the best. But there's a prerequisite to that goal. And that prerequisite is having money to pay for the fucking lesson, right? And so these 2 rules, okay? So rule number 1 is that you cannot work on everything at the exact same time. And number 2 is that there's certain prerequisites to certain goals. And another really good idea is that certain inputs accomplish others instantly. So like, for example, one of the inputs I have that is kind of big is making enough money. Whether it's 5K a month, I don't know, but it's making enough money, and that's how much I have to find it. Now, the key is, when I make enough money, there's probably about 10 things in that list of goals / inputs that are now available to me. Or like my physique, right? Honestly, guys, the two things that are gonna fuel everything are making enough money and having a good enough physique. Because if I do those things, I can make RTC, I can talk to girls, I can move out, I can put my parents at rest, right? Like, you see what I'm trying to say is that there's like an 80-20 principle with inputs, where 20% of the inputs you have listed down are doing 80% of the progress. And so when you're talking about prioritizing, oh my god, I got a fucking spider web on me. I'm so sorry, guys. Hopefully no spider bites me or anything like that. But what I'm trying to say here, guys, is that, dude, is there a fucking spider on me? Holy shit. I hate walking through spider webs. It's the worst thing ever. I'll deal with that later. But yeah, is that when you're trying to prioritize, you want to get those things done first, because then everything becomes easier. And if you didn't do that, like let's say I focused on making money last, then I wouldn't even accomplish anything in 4.5 months. I wouldn't have any of those goals accomplished. So that's what I'm trying to say. To recap, the idea I was writing down on the Google Doc is that figuring out the goal and figuring out what to do to accomplish each goal is not the hard part. The hard part is figuring out what to do and when to do it, and when to prioritize everything in a certain timeline. And the reason that's hard is because you can't break the two rules, which rule number 1 is that you can't work on too many things at the same time. And rule number 2 is that there's certain prerequisites or certain requirements to even start an input or start working on a goal, okay? And so you really just have to manpower through it. I didn't write this down, but that's the idea. And so the conclusion is that that's the hardest part. Very interesting, because I never like really defined what that means, but now I have that idea like written down. And so I can define it exactly and like, yeah. And if anything, that's kind of why plans tend to fail, because people just they're not focused, or they just don't work on the right thing. So yeah, that's the idea. I don't know if this storage is probably gonna run out any minute now. But yeah, as a ending statement would be, sorry guys, I'm just hearing a lot of sounds in the neighborhood, kind of distracting me. But you kind of just have to fucking just do more planning, and you have to do trial and error of like writing down a certain plan and thinking about it and running through it in your head and being like, okay, that's not right, I gotta change this part about the plan. And maybe you look at the to-do list and you have to switch around some priorities because you do some critical thinking, right? And so it's just a lot. But yeah, I wanted to jot down this idea in this journal because it's really useful when it comes to making those big plans. Because right now, obviously, I'm planning out the next 4.5 months of my year, and that's over a third of my year, almost half. And that's a big plan to make. That's a very important plan to make. And so when I have trouble doing this, I'll know why, and then I could just keep thinking about it. But yeah, you kind of just have to really just like keep thinking about it, and really critically think about what is most important, and then everything take care of itself. Because if you could just figure out like exactly what is the most important, then you can prioritize those things, and then all the other fluff in the plan will just take care of itself, because the prerequisite has been satisfied by the more important to do, or like input, or whatever you want to call it. So that's pretty cool. I'm actually figuring out that I'm starting to, I don't know if it's because of Dayton, or whatever, but I'm starting to talk better, and I'm able to explain concepts a little bit better, at least for my paradigm. Oh my god, I'm fucking hiccuping. But yeah, so right now it is 9:15. I'm gonna do a little bit more work, probably play some Minecraft too, because why the fuck not? And I'm gonna keep planning a little bit. What I'm probably gonna do, guys, is I don't know if I'm gonna pause planning yet, because I wrote down all the goals I want to accomplish, and I wrote down this rule I made, or this idea that took a long time to figure out. And I also figured out what I'm gonna do later in the plan, which is simply gonna be, I'm gonna just make a big ass to-do list, which is the easy part. And then after that I gotta start prioritizing. But I think it'll be easy, because I thought about this idea for so long, and I kind of know in the back of my head, like, the 2 or 3 things I need to do that are gonna fuel the entire transformation, which is gonna be money and physique. But it's like the hard part, guys, is that here's another couple caveats that I figured out. This journal is probably gonna end at any moment now, but fuck it. A couple things that are subtle that could make this a little bit harder, or like a lot harder, are that, number one, certain tasks are not linear. So it's not like a to-do list this is why video games are so addicting, because most things you can do in video games, you can just do it once and never have to do it again. So like, you can get like a maxed out piece of armor and you have to never worry about armor again. Or like, you get a maxed out sword and you never have to worry about getting a sword again. It's just done. But when you're making a plan, a lot of the inputs are not linear, meaning you can't just complete them. An example is making money every month, maintaining calories every day. And so when you're trying to like figure out what to do chronologically, it's kind of hard, because sometimes everything could just kind of like blend in with each other, and it's hard to tell like if doing something before something even makes a difference. An example is like, when the fuck should I start this course? Or like, when should I start drumming again? When should I take lessons? And like, all these like little things are going to be hard, but I don't even think those are worth being perfect about. As long as you get the important things right, then you can afford to be a little bit rough on the edges when it comes to like those little minute things that are really hard to tell, like when the fuck you should exactly prioritize them. As long as you just aggressive enough, have the right mindset, and you work hard enough, then you should be able to get everything done. I'm gonna apply that for me too. I shouldn't, unless there's some deadlines, which there kind of are. For example, the teachers in my lessons are gonna be Merchant Drum Corps, and so I only have like a month maybe to get lessons from them before they go off in the entire summer. So little shit like that. But yeah, planning's pretty interesting, because it's a very unique thing in my opinion. But yeah, see you guys later. I'm gonna maybe stop planning for tonight, depending on how much time I have. I'll probably do like another 10-20 minutes of planning, and I'll get off, and then start working on this PayPal shit, and then reserve a little hour, 2 hours to play some Minecraft and go to sleep. So yeah, bye guys, bye.